Hi, everyone. I'm here with Ron Cantor, a Messianic Jewish communicator here in Israel. How you doing, Ron?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Now, to kind of get the obvious out of the way, you're sounding awfully American to me.
Yes, I was born in Virginia. I'm Jewish. I had a radical experience when I was 18 years old in a car in the middle of North Carolina praying after seeing a movie about Jesus, which is strange enough that a Jewish young man was at a movie about Jesus. But I was searching for God. I was searching for truth. And I just said, God, I have to know. I have to know. Is it Jesus, Judaism, both? I don't understand. Explain it to me. And as I was praying, my friend lost control of the car. It spun around several times, flipped over upside down in the middle of nowhere, but there was one house. And inside those houses were two believers with a copy of Evidence That Demands a Verdict by Josh McDowell. And by the end of them talking to me, I was having a supernatural encounter with God, who revealed to me Jesus, Yeshua, and I became a believer.
Now, obviously there are lots of Jews who don't come to that same conclusion. So
Yes.
why do you believe that Jesus is the Messiah?
Well, first of all, he fulfilled the prophet. The book they gave me, Evidence That Demands a Verdict. Josh McDowell is a brilliant apologist. And one of the things you see is that Yeshua, Jesus, fulfilled so many prophecies, it would be impossible for it not to be him. He was born in Bethlehem. If you just take Isaiah 53, and rejected by his own people, gives his life for his own people. He is buried with the rich. Joseph of Arimathea takes his body with Nicodemus. With sinners, he dies on a Roman cross, which was the way you killed bad people. And he would see the light of life again. He rose from the dead. So he fulfilled the prophecies. Now, for me at the time, none of that. I didn't know any of that. What I had was an encounter with God, and that was enough for me. But what happened? See, at that time, I said, "Well, I'm now a Christian. I'm no longer Jewish. I don't know what's happened to me," and I began to read the Bible. The biggest shock for me, David, is as I'm reading the New Testament, everyone's Jewish. Like, I had no idea. There's a guy named John the Baptist, who's actually not Baptist, but Jewish. He was a Jewish prophet. Paul the Apostle was actually a Jewish rabbi. Peter, John. Like, I had no idea they were all Jewish. And the big controversy in the New Covenant wasn't, can Jewish people believe that Jesus is the Messiah? All of the believers were Jewish. It was when Peter begins to preach to Gentiles. In fact, in Acts chapter 10, when the Holy Spirit falls on the Gentiles, they begin to pray in tongues. Peter, what is it he say? Who can stop these Gentiles from being baptized in water? See, it's no controversy today. We're right near the Mediterranean Sea right over there. If I take some Gentiles over there to baptize, that's not controversial. But if I take a Jewish person, that's taboo. That's a big deal. But during the times, just after Jesus rose from the dead, of the new covenant, baptizing Gentiles, that was the controversial thing. And of course, we know in Acts 15, they have a big, the first church council, if you will. And they said, all right, Gentiles don't have to become Jewish to believe in Jesus. Do you understand that no Jewish person, well, not no, but almost no Jewish people understand that Acts 15 is actually part of the New Testament history, that they wanted to tell the Gentiles, okay, you can believe in the Messiah, but first you have to convert to Judaism. Now what they say is if you're Jewish like me, in order to believe, you have to leave Judaism. And I discovered very quickly that I'm still Jewish and I live as a Jew. I live here in the land of the Jews, and I have a relationship with Yeshua, Jesus, the Messiah.
And it's interesting that you brought up Isaiah 53 because I interact a lot with Muslims, and I've heard some very similar stories of people who read Isaiah 53, Christians who read Isaiah 53 to Jews, and I have a friend named Tony who's got some Jewish in-laws, and he said he read Isaiah 53 to his Jewish in-laws, and they said, "Stop reading the New Testament to us. We only believe."
I'll tell you a true story. I was on an airplane. I used to be a sales manager in a radio station, and I had a guy who worked for me. He was 80 years old. He was a great salesman, and we were on our way to a conference on an airplane, and I had been sharing with him. and I read to him from Isaiah 53. He cursed at me, and he said, "Stop reading from the New Testament."
Wow. And that's the reason I find that interesting is I've had that experience with Muslims when I would read to them Isaiah 53 and then say, "Who's this talking about?" And they go, "Jesus," but we don't believe in you. We don't believe in the New Testament. Like, wait a minute, that's actually Old Testament. But another thing that I find interesting is. Because certain prophecies are known to kind of, any Christian who gets into apologetics will be familiar with some of the prophecies, but a lot of the Messianic believers go way deeper than most people in apologetics are aware of. And I found this out in a debate on Faith Under Fire between Michael Brown and Rabbi Shmuley Boteach, and we did a live stream with Rabbi Shmuley a while back, but and just the level that they were debating on, going into just very minute details in the prophets and so on, was just fascinating. It's like this actually goes much deeper than most Christians are aware of. So yeah, this is lots of stuff for Muslims and Christians and Jews to consider. But now we're actually in Ashkelon right now,
right,
in Israel. And what made you want to move over here?
To Israel or to Ashkelon?
Either one.
Well, Ashkelon, I'm here because my mother-in-law is getting older, and we moved here. The funny thing is we moved here just a few months ago, and then October the 7th happened. A war breaks out. They moved my mother-in-law, because she's 84 years old and she doesn't move well, to a wonderful, we call it Beit Avot, an old age home in Tel Aviv, and my wife and I were stuck here with the Rockets. But we moved to Israel. My wife is a native-born Israeli. She came to faith a couple years after I did, and we just always knew that eventually we would make our way back here to Israel. So in 2003, we moved here with our 3 daughters, but we've lived in the Tel Aviv area during most of that time. But let me just go a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
The real reason is the prophecies in the Bible. The Bible talks about the Jewish people in the end times not only coming to faith, but coming back to this land. There's 2 things that are going to happen: coming back to this land and coming back to faith in God, or I believe in Yeshua. So we wanted to reach our people, so we came back here. We have a ministry called Shalanu TV, which is a 24/7 Hebrew language gospel channel that plays here in the land, and we Facebook and TikTok and all the social media, reaching Jewish people, Israelis, with the message of Yeshua.
And it's interesting because you moved here, but just also, I mean, this is my second trip to Israel, and I've been here for about a week, and I just met a lot of people who, you just hear their accent and like, hey, you're from America. What's going on? It's just lots of Jews are moving back here, and that brings up an issue of what it's like to be a Jewish believer in Jesus here in Israel, because as soon as I mentioned that I'm going to Israel, I get all of these messages, usually from Muslims, but also from some Christians, saying, you better not wear your cross or let them know you're a Christian because you're going to get beat up. And everyone says that I'm going to get spit upon. And I've been wearing this cross nonstop for a week. And I've been at the Western Wall. I went to Michael Rappaport's bar mitzvah. I was in there. We went under the Western Wall area to the archaeological sites and went through there. And we came out and we're in the area that's like prohibited for non-Jews, but I was just kind of part of the group. And I've been wearing a cross the entire time. No one has so much as looked at me wrong. For wearing a cross. And when I say that, they say they post videos of some group of like ultra Orthodox Jews who like spit on Christians as they walk by. And so what's going on there?
That is that's 1% of 1%. It's just like a
tiny minority.
A tiny minority. And you say, well, why do we see them? Because it's not news if I don't spit on you. If I don't persecute you, nobody's going to film me and put it on YouTube. But if something crazy happens, that's what we all film and we put online. But I've lived here for 20 years, and I've been rejected exactly 2 times for my faith, and each time it was not violent at all. The first time I was at the Western Wall. I was filming a 4-part series on the Six-Day War, and at the end of the last episode, there was just an unusual, just God was there. And I could feel it. I could see a crowd gathering around us. And I was just hoping I wouldn't mess up because we were using a teleprompter. And as I finished, a rabbi walks up to me with his wife and children. And he says, "Would you come to our synagogue and give sermons?" And I said, "Well, I would love to." I said, "But I think there's something you need to know about me first." And that was the end of the conversation.
That actually reminds me, like in the Bible, and they'll be, "Hey, Paul, why don't you come preach here?" That's interesting.
Exactly. And unfortunately, we did suffer one violent attack, and it was recently. But again, it was from this fringe group. We had a prayer meeting. There was 3 weeks of prayer and fasting for Israel. Christians all over the world participated back in May, and we ended right outside the Western Wall on the southern steps with a prayer meeting. And unfortunately, there are some people who are bad guys, bad actors, and one of the deputy mayors of Jerusalem called for a protest. When I say deputy mayor, you have 10 deputy mayors. Some are left-wing, some are right, from all over the spectrum. This guy's a radical. He called for people to come out and protest, and police had to help people get in. Again, it wasn't super violent, but it was aggressive. But my wife came in after the police had left and after everyone else had left. And unfortunately, she was beaten up by some older teenagers. And, her testimony is that while they were hitting her, it was almost like she was watching it. And Yeshua, Jesus, was standing with her saying, "This is what they did to me." But not in a accusatory, but pray for them, love them, care for them. They like Jesus said, "Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing." But again, that is 1% of 1%. The vast majority of Jewish people that I meet, that I share with, they're intrigued. When I tell them that I'm Jewish, that I believe in Yeshua, Jesus, they want to know how I came to this conclusion.
Yeah, and the interesting part here is that the vast majority of people who say, "Watch out, David, because they're going to beat you up or they're going to spit on you," or something like that, they're the exact same people who, after every terrorist attack carried out in the name of Islam, from Boko Haram, from Al-Shabaab, from Hamas, from Hezbollah, from Al-Qaeda, ISIS, the Taliban, after every attack, it's don't associate this with any other Muslims. But these same exact people will say either here's a ultra Orthodox Jewish guy spitting on Christians, therefore that's the way Jews are, and this is what's going to happen to you.
Right.
Or they will say, here's something that a Jewish rabbi said in the 7th century, and therefore that's what all Jews believe, and so watch out.
Right. The vast majority of Jewish people I actually don't care what I believe. In fact, I remember I was here with a tour group, and this sweet fella from the South in America, he walked up to a Jewish girl, another tourist from America, from New York, and said, started to share the gospel with her, and she just looked at him and said, "Congratulations," and just kept walking. She didn't care. Mm-hmm. I would hope they would care more, but the idea that Jewish people are actively violent against me because of my faith is just ridiculous.
And one quick question along those lines. You're in Ashkelon, that's fairly close to Gaza. What do you, as a Jewish believer in Jesus, what would you consider a greater threat to your and your family's safety, Jews in Israel or Hamas?
Well, that's for someone living here, that's a very easy question to answer. I see rockets go over my house from Hamas. Mm-hmm. I've not, again, other than that one incident my wife went through, and it wasn't a great thing that she went through, and it was very difficult, but it was one time in 20 years. We've watched hundreds of rockets literally fly over. Ashdod is right over there. I watched the Iron Dome go up and take them out. They are actively seeking, if they could, they would kill all of us. And when I say they, I don't mean every Palestinian. I don't mean every Arab. We love the Arab people. We want to reach them with the gospel. I'm talking about Hamas, which is a terrorist organization. And sadly, even all throughout Gaza, you look at the UN and their schools there, they're actively teaching anti-Semitism. So If you're a 2-year-old kid, a 3-year-old kid growing up in Gaza, you don't have a chance to simply see the world as it is. You were taught from the time you're a child, Jews are bloodthirsty. Jews want to kill you. They want to rape you. But it was Hamas who actually raped our daughters on October the 7th. Gang raped them, shot them in the head, left them, others left for dead, shot them in the pelvises. It is unconscionable what they did. And what's amazing, David, I thought really after October 7th, I thought now they're going to understand. Now the world is going to understand what we live with. They're going to understand why we have to be tough, why we have to have fences and borders, because they want to kill us. And it was like that for about 10 minutes. It was the next day, October 8th, I think, in Harvard, where they were already protesting against, before we had even responded, they're supporting the rapists and the murderers. So in answer to your question, Hamas is their terrorist organization.
Yeah, and you're talking about how people view Jews, and it just seems like so radically different. As I mentioned, that if Muslims do something, it's, hey, don't blame all Muslims. Right. But if a Jew does something, we got to, and like all the rules suddenly go out the window as soon as Jews are involved. And I was in an interview the other day, and he was, someone was the interviewer was asking me why I would support Israel in this conflict, and when I'm a Christian and so on. And I said probably 20 different reasons, and I gave some examples, and one of them was just like, there seems to be this like demonic obsession with Jews. And right when I say that, people are going to say, well, maybe it's because the Jews are doing this stuff and so on. But it's not that. It's that there's constant lying about them involved. Right. There's utter hypocrisy. Any rule that applies to anyone else in the world suddenly goes out the window when we're talking about Jews. Right. And you wonder why. And I couldn't think of another example. I said, look, if I saw a horde of demons going after a squirrel, and I had no idea what anything else was about, I'd be like, well, if the demons are going after the squirrel, I have a sudden urge to go to protect the squirrel, and it's kind of a feeling like that. But there is I do want it from a Christian perspective, because there are different Christian perspectives on Jews being in the land and whether they lost any sort of divine right to the land. And I don't even think about this in terms. I think of this in like human rights and so on. Right. And the resilience of the Jewish people and so on. So I'm thinking, and like Jews actually needing a place, because I would say they had an airtight case for needing a place where they can protect themselves after World War II. And then after decades go by, you think, but we've moved past that. And you just saw recently how things can flip on the drop of a dime. And people on Twitter and TikTok start celebrating Hitler and saying maybe Hitler was right.
And Bin Laden, he's suddenly a poet.
Yeah, he's suddenly a brilliant, wonderful guy. And it's like, no, really seems like people's opinion can switch like that. And so, but what is your perspective on it? Because Christians do have different perspectives, but as far as Jews being in the land of Israel.
Well, before I share on that, let me just say something about what you said before. I saw a video yesterday on Twitter. The video was Israeli soldiers eating food. They were happy, there was joy, there was good morale, and the person who posted it wrote, the Zionists are inhumane. What she meant is how can they eat and be happy? What she doesn't understand is that the war, you know where you are geographically, David, it's 10 minutes that way. In 10 minutes, I can be at the border of Gaza. So the food that they're eating is coming from people like me, from the rest of Israel, who are going to our scared troops, who don't want to be there, who don't want to be risking their lives, but are willing to, because they witnessed October the 7th, and we bring food in, we bring dessert in, we say we love you, we're with you, we're praying for you, and they're happy. That's inhumane. That's how they twist everything around. But in terms of, Jewish people being in the land, I am a Zionist. I believe, and what do I mean by that? Because Zionist has suddenly become like this four-letter word. It's this evil word.
Oh, and let me just say right there, because in the past I thought of Zionists as someone who believes that Jews have a divine right to this land. And so in the past I'd say, well, I'm not a Zionist because I don't know. I don't know about divine right. I'm thinking in terms of like human rights and so on. Whereas now it seems like a Zionist is anyone who thinks that Israel has a right to defend itself against terrorist attacks. So you just tell us what you mean. And
Well,
then,
I am
and
a
then your perspective.
biblical Zionist. I believe that God's promises to Abraham, he said forever, le'olam va'ed in Hebrew, forever. There's no other words that we have for that. Or mi'olam adalam, which means literally forever and ever. These promises were made in the Bible. So either God is a liar, or exactly what the prophet said would happen has happened, which is we were disciplined as a people. We were scattered all over the world. Ezekiel said, I'm going to bring you back from all the lands where I have scattered you. That was more than Babylon. That's just one land. But we were scattered after 70 AD all over the world. And here, there are 7 million Jews back in this country living. It's a beautiful country, as you've seen. We're productive. We're so productive that our enemies want to make peace with us, not because they like Jews, but because they want our technology, the Abraham Accords. That has nothing to do with the UAE liking us. It's them wanting to make money. And Saudi Arabia wants to make peace with us, and Saudi Arabia does not care about, by the way, they don't care about Palestinians. They don't care about Jews. They care about making money, and that's why they want to make peace with Israel. So I believe that us being here today, the Jewish people, it's a fulfillment of prophecy. But I could argue it just on a humanitarian level, that, like you said, after the Holocaust, it was clear to everyone that we as a people will never be safe in Europe. We'll never be safe in the Americas. We'll never be safe anywhere. And you know what? I lived in America most of my life till I was 38 years old. And honestly, I thought, well, anti-Semitism will never take hold here. Well, October the 7th happens, and it's mainstream. You can say things on Twitter or any other social media, horrible things about the Jewish people, that if you had said it on October 6th, people would have called you an anti-Semite. Now you're a humanitarian. So on a humanitarian level, we have nowhere else to go. Now, understand that the Arab nations that you know today, Iraq, Lebanon, Jordan, they're all new nations. These are not, it's Arabia. The Arab people are one people scattered throughout North Africa and all over the Middle East. And after World War I, they cut up this whole area and they created all these new nations. But they're Arabs. And again, we're not anti-Arab. We would love to live at peace with the Arabs. But you have to not look at this situation as Israel as this aggressor. We're a tiny sliver. Just go look at your map. We're a tiny sliver of land.
It's about the size of New Jersey.
Surrounded, right, by New Jersey, surrounded by 99% plus of Arabs or Persians. And many of them would love to see us dead. So we have to be strong or we will not exist as a people.
And so that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about. But for people who want to know more, where would they go?
RonCantor.com. That's RonCantor.com. And of course, we're on all the social media sites and ShelanoTV.com if you want to learn more about our TV network.
All right. Thanks, brother.
Thank you, David. God bless you.